Welcome to today's eye-opening episode where we uncover a game-changing revelation. Pakistan's secret 5,000 kilometers missile project revealed. We will talk about important points that are crucial for you to know. By the end of this video, you'll gain a deeper understanding of Pakistan's long-range missile ambitions, its impact on regional power dynamics, and what it means for global security. So stay with us till the end. This is not just a defense update. It's a strategic shift you need to be aware of. If you're passionate about global affairs, defense technology, or geopolitics, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more insightful content. Let me tell you something about secrecy, real secrecy, not the kind that leaks, not rumors in newspapers, but the kind of silence where even insiders look the other way. That's exactly how Pakistan's 5,000-kilometer missile project has been handled. This wasn't something announced at a press conference or revealed in a televised military parade. No, this was buried deep under layers of classified operations, need-to-know access, and years of deliberate quiet. You don't keep a project like this under wraps unless it's massive, unless it changes the entire game. And this one does. Think about it. Why would a country like Pakistan, already possessing medium-range ballistic missile capabilities, choose to go silent on a project that clearly stretches its military reach far beyond previous limits? The answer is strategy, real strategy. When you're playing at this level, you don't advertise your next move. You don't show your hand until the moment is right. For years, there were whispers in defense circles, questions raised by international observers, and speculation about unusual movements in certain military zones. But no one had solid proof, because the design, research, and initial development of this missile were executed with absolute precision and confidentiality. We're not talking about one facility tucked away in the mountains. This was a network, disconnected, compartmentalized, and protected by national security protocols. Engineers and scientists worked in silos with only fragments of information. You don't tell the whole story when you're building something this critical, and they didn't. They managed to keep it away from the world's radar, literally and figuratively, for over a decade. It's only now, as bits of data start leaking and satellite images raise red flags, that the world is catching on to what's really been going on. Here's the part most people miss. It's not just about making a missile. Anyone with enough resources can pour money into developing a long-range system. What matters is why you're doing it quietly. And that's where the mindset shift comes in. You don't create a 5,000-kilometer missile just to match someone else. You build it because you're preparing for a future scenario that hasn't happened yet, but you're determined to be ready for it. This is forward planning. Let's talk about what this missile actually means in the bigger picture, because this isn't just another step forward in military development. It's a leap, a bold, calculated leap from Pakistan's existing missile program into a whole new territory. Everyone's heard of the Shaheen 3. That missile was a major milestone with a range of about 2,750 kilometers. It gave Pakistan the ability to hit targets across India, even reaching into the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. It was powerful. But the project we're talking about now, this 5,000-kilometer missile, it's not just the next version. It's not Shaheen 4. It's something entirely different. You have to understand, when a country builds a missile with double the range of its previous best, it's not just upgrading capability, it's redefining its strategic perimeter. You're not talking about South Asia anymore. You're not even limited to the immediate region. You're looking at targets thousands of kilometers away, well into Central Asia, parts of Europe, and deep into the Indian Ocean. That's a global posture. That's saying, we're not just here to defend, we're here to shape the future battlefield. And here's the truth. You don't go from 2,750 kilometers to 5,000 kilometers without a complete overhaul. This isn't a simple enhancement. It requires a totally new design philosophy, new propulsion systems, multi-stage boosters, better fuel technology. You need enhanced aerodynamics, precision targeting, and a guidance system that works flawlessly over hours, not minutes. The teams working on this weren't just improving, they were reinventing. And that's what makes this so significant. It's not just that the missile can go farther, it's that it was built to operate at a completely different strategic level. People often miss what that really means. When you build a missile with this kind of range, you start to shift the balance, not only militarily, but psychologically. Suddenly, the old assumptions no longer apply. Distance is no longer protection. Time is no longer an advantage. And those who once believed they were safely out of reach, they're now on the radar. Literally. That's the kind of impact that sends shockwaves, not just through defense establishments, but across global diplomatic tables. It also creates a ripple effect. Because when one country expands its range that drastically, others are forced to respond. They recalculate their defense protocols. They question their existing alliances. They even reconsider their diplomatic tone. And that shift, that subtle but powerful shift, is the true impact of extending range from 2,750 kilometers to 5,000 kilometers. It's not just about hitting farther, it's about making everyone else look over their shoulder. Now imagine doing all of this in silence. No public statements, no dramatic tests, just quiet progress, steady development, and then boom, the reveal. That tells you the level of confidence and control behind the scenes. They weren't rushing to show the world. They were focused on getting it right. And now that it's nearly ready, the message is clear. We're not just playing the game anymore. We're changing it. So when you hear that Pakistan has moved beyond Shaheen 3, don't just see it as a technological jump. See it for what it is, a statement of intent, a recalibration of power, and a reminder that sometimes the biggest moves aren't made with noise. They're made with precision, timing, and the kind of boldness that doesn't ask for permission. Let's get honest about why a 5,000-kilometer missile really matters. Because at this level, it's no longer just about the missile. It's about the message. And messages like this, they're never sent by accident. A move this bold, this deliberate, is a strategic signal, loud and clear. Pakistan isn't just increasing its range for the sake of numbers. It's extending its reach to reshape how the world sees its power, its deterrence, and its place in the regional and even global security equation. Now think about what 5,000 kilometers really covers. We're not just talking about reaching all corners of India anymore. We're talking about reaching deep into the Middle East, North Africa, Central Asia, even parts of Europe. That changes everything. It sends a direct message to adversaries and observers alike. We are no longer bound by proximity. If you can reach us, we can reach you. That kind of statement changes how countries operate. It changes how they plan, how they talk, how they move. It forces them to look again at what they thought they knew and realize the game has shifted. This is about power projection, but not just the kind that's measured in warheads or missile counts. It's about psychological power, strategic confidence. When a country like Pakistan steps into this range category, it makes a declaration, not of aggression, but of readiness, of deterrence, of stability through strength. And here's what most people misunderstand. Deterrence doesn't come from capability alone. It comes from the belief that you will act if you need to. It comes from demonstrating you are prepared and you are serious. And that kind of message, it ripples far beyond the region. Let's be real, India will have to respond, but so will others. Countries that may have quietly dismissed Pakistan as a regional actor will now have to rethink their assessments. Military analysts, defense ministries, intelligence agencies, they all take notice when a missile can suddenly put their cities within range. That's not theory. That's a strategic shockwave. Quiet, maybe, but powerful. Immediate. Unignorable. Now, why send a message like this? Because it works. Because when you can signal strength without firing a shot, you shift the balance in your favor without losing a single soldier. That's smart power. And whether the world likes it or not, that's how the rules are played. You build leverage. You don't beg for it. And you certainly don't ask your adversaries for permission to defend yourself. You earn that right by showing what you're capable of. And that's exactly what this missile does. But here's the key. It's not a threat. It's a boundary. It's the clear, unmistakable line drawn in the sand that says, cross this and you will face consequences. That's what real deterrence is. It's not about being the loudest or the most aggressive. It's about being unshakable, about knowing your strength and using it to maintain peace, not provoke war. That's the difference between reckless ambition and responsible defense. And the message behind this missile leans hard toward the latter. So don't look at this as just a technical milestone. Look at it for what it really is. a message of sovereignty, preparedness, and unspoken warning. And make no mistake, that message has been received. Let's talk about what really goes into building a missile with a 5,000-kilometer range. People hear the number and think, wow, that's far. But they don't realize what's behind that distance. This isn't about slapping an extra fuel tank on an old missile and hoping it flies farther. No. This kind of development requires a complete reimagining of the technology, the science, and the systems behind it. It's a total transformation. And Pakistan making this leap tells you exactly how serious they are. This isn't a minor upgrade. It's not about polishing what already exists. It's about designing something entirely new, from the engine to the warhead. The most important shift is in propulsion. A 5,000-kilometer range isn't possible with the same engines used in medium-range ballistic missiles. You need advanced multi-stage rocket systems, boosters that fire sequentially, each one carefully calculated to maximize velocity and altitude. And guess what? That means developing entirely new fuel systems, more efficient combustion, lighter but stronger materials, and the ability to survive intense heat and pressure through multiple layers of the atmosphere. And then there's guidance. If a missile is traveling thousands of kilometers, even the tiniest margin of error can send it completely off course. So, precision is everything. That requires top-tier navigation tech. Satellite-assisted systems, gyroscopes, inertial guidance that stays locked even when communications are jammed. You can't guess your way to the target. You have to know with absolute certainty where it's going to land before it even launches. Let's not forget the structure itself. To carry a warhead across half a continent, the missile has to be light but incredibly strong. That's where composite materials come in: carbon fiber, advanced alloys, heat-resistant ceramics. This isn't just military tech, it's aerospace-level engineering. And for a country like Pakistan to be working with these materials at this scale under high-stakes secrecy, that tells you how far they've come. This also signals a shift in scientific capacity. You don't just buy this kind of tech, you build it, you test it, you fail, you test again. It takes years and it takes people, brilliant, highly skilled people, working behind the scenes, away from the spotlight, solving problems most of us can't even pronounce. So when we talk about this missile, we're also talking about what it took to get here. The human effort, the sleepless nights, the failures no one ever heard about, the calculations that had to be right, down to the last decimal. That level of development doesn't happen by chance. It happens because there's a bigger vision in play. A belief that future security will not be handed over. It has to be earned. And that belief is backed by science, by progress, by determination. That's what's sitting underneath every meter of that 5,000-kilometer capability. And here's something else to think about. Building technology like this doesn't just change your defense capacity, it upgrades your entire technological ecosystem. It raises the bar for what's possible. It spills over into other fields: satellite tech, communications, materials science, even energy. The ripple effects are massive, and they all stem from one decision: to push farther than anyone expected. So no, this isn't just about a missile that flies longer. It's about proving that a country can evolve its technology, its thinking, and its future through willpower, science, and the courage to build what others said was. There's a line most countries don't cross, a boundary in missile development that once you step over it, puts you in an entirely different league. That line is the intercontinental range, and a 5,000-kilometer missile, it gets you close, very close. Now let's be clear. Technically, an ICBM, or intercontinental ballistic missile, is defined by a range of over 5,500 kilometers. But when you're sitting at 5,000 kilometers, you're within striking distance, literally and symbolically. You're not just developing long-range capability anymore. You're knocking on the door of global reach. And that's not something you do by accident. That's a decision. That's strategy. Because once you get that close to ICBM range, you're saying to the world, we're not limited by geography anymore. You're not just focused on the region. You're preparing for any threat from anywhere. That's what makes this missile such a shift. It signals a move from regional defense to global deterrence. Now, crossing into ICBM territory isn't just about reaching targets farther away. It's about stepping into a different geopolitical space. There are only a few countries that have proven ICBM capability: the US, Russia, China, and a couple of others. It's a small elite club. And the moment a new player gets that close, it forces everyone else to pay attention. Suddenly, strategic planners in Europe, in North America, in East Asia, they all have to rerun their calculations. Because if a missile from Pakistan can almost reach 5,500 kilometers, that means one more stage, one more upgrade, and suddenly entire new continents are in range. That possibility alone, just the potential, is enough to shift international dynamics. It changes how allies align, how threats are assessed, and how diplomacy is handled. You think arms control talks won't start to circle around that? You think military alliances won't begin to rethink their approach? They will. Because range equals reach and reach equals leverage. That's the real power of getting close to ICBM capability. It forces the world to take you seriously in a way that few other developments can. What's even more powerful, though, is what this represents internally. You don't build something like this just to intimidate others. You build it because you believe your security, your sovereignty, demands it. And let's be honest, when the global playing field feels unpredictable, when alliances are shifting and trust is thin, you don't wait for others to protect your interests. You develop the tools yourself. You make sure your voice cannot be ignored. And you know what else? There's courage in that, because it's easier to stay within limits, to keep your capability just strong enough not to ruffle feathers. But boldness lives on the other side of caution. This move toward ICBM level range is bold. It's saying, we're not here to follow, we're here to define our path. That mindset, that readiness to evolve even when the risks are high, is what separates reactive states from strategic ones. So yes, the 5,000-kilometer range is a milestone. But it's more than that. It's a signal that Pakistan is preparing for a future where it's not just reacting to threats, it's shaping the environment around them. That kind of move doesn't just increase missile range, it expands the boundaries of influence, deterrence, and respect. And once you're that close to the intercontinental threshold, the world doesn't see you the same way again. You know what people don't talk about enough? The power of silence. The kind of silence that isn't weakness but control, discipline, intent. That's exactly how this 5,000-kilometer missile came into being, through a silent era of development that wasn't about headlines or press conferences. It was about focus, about staying out of the spotlight while building something too important, too strategic, to risk exposing too early. And that silence, that was part of the plan. This missile didn't just appear out of nowhere. It's the result of over a decade of effort. But it was effort that happened in shadows, not because there was something to hide, but because there was something to protect. You can't build this level of technology while trying to satisfy public curiosity or deal with constant international interference, so they shut the doors, kept things compartmentalized. Only the people who absolutely needed to know were involved. Everyone else kept out of the loop. And that's exactly how something this big stayed off the radar for so long. That kind of silence doesn't come easy. It requires leadership that understands the value of long-term thinking, scientists and engineers who are willing to work in isolation, military planners who can look years ahead and not be distracted by daily noise. And it requires trust. Trust in the mission, trust in the people working behind the scenes. Because when you're working on a high-risk, high-impact program like this, you have to know that every mistake, every breakthrough, every delay is part of a process that must stay protected until the time is right. And during that time, those silent years, every piece of progress had to be carefully managed, tested without being detected, designed without being traced, improved without drawing attention. That means moving people, materials, and knowledge through secure channels. It means working in labs no one talks about, behind gates the public will never see. And most of all, it means saying no to the temptation of early celebration. No leaks, no hints, just work. Why does that matter? Because when a country like Pakistan builds something as sensitive as a 5,000-kilometer missile, it knows the international spotlight will be harsh. There will be criticism, pressure, threats, maybe even sanctions. But by staying silent until the technology was nearly mature, they bought themselves time. Time to test, time to refine. Time to make sure that when the curtain lifted, the world would see capability, not speculation. Power, not promises. That's not just engineering, that's strategy. And here's the thing, most nations don't get that kind of freedom. The second a new project leaks, the noise begins. Everyone wants to weigh in. Allies start questioning, rivals start plotting, but silence creates space. Space to move without being watched, to prepare without being second-guessed. And once that space closes, once the development is exposed, it's already too late to stop. That's the brilliance of this approach. By the time the world found out, the missile wasn't an idea. It was a reality. So when you hear that this 5,000-kilometer missile has been in the works for years, understand this wasn't procrastination. It was patience. It was discipline. It was the kind of focus that doesn't chase approval, but prepares for impact. Because real power isn't built with noise. It's built in silence and revealed only when it's ready to change everything. Let's talk about what happens when a single missile shifts the balance of an entire region. Because that's exactly what this 5,000-kilometer range capability does. It doesn't just add to Pakistan's arsenal, it rewrites the strategic equation of South Asia. One missile quietly developed now has the power to force every other player in the region to stop, reassess, and rethink. And that shift, it's not just technical, it's political, it's psychological. It's deeply personal to the security policies of every state that thought the rules of the game were already set. This missile reaches far beyond India, but let's be honest, India will feel it first. The dynamic between Pakistan and India has always been tense, with both sides maintaining powerful missile programs under the doctrine of deterrence. But deterrence is about balance, and when one side suddenly reveals it has a capability that can travel nearly twice as far as before, that balance doesn't hold the same way anymore. It shakes, it tilts, and with that shift comes urgency. Urgency to respond, urgency to match, and urgency to prepare for a future that suddenly looks very different. That's not a provocation, it's a consequence of progress. Because Pakistan didn't build this missile to start a war. They built it to prevent one, to say we see what's happening around us, we understand the threats, and we are ready if we have to be. That's the heart of credible minimum deterrence. Not having hundreds of warheads, not showing off, just having enough to make sure that no one even thinks about making the first move. But here's where it gets more complicated. The second one country upgrades its capability, others follow. India might feel pressure to expand its own long-range arsenal. Other regional actors like Iran, China, or even Gulf states may start reassessing their own positions. And then suddenly what started as a national development project becomes a regional ripple. Everyone starts watching each other more closely. Everyone starts speaking a little more carefully. And while that might sound tense, it's also a sign of balance. Because when power is respected, peace is preserved. This missile also changes how global powers deal with the region. The United States, Russia, China, these countries now have to consider how Pakistan's new capability fits into the broader global architecture of missile defense and non-proliferation. It adds complexity to diplomatic dialogues, arms control negotiations, and military partnerships. It means Pakistan now sits at a table where new conversations are happening, conversations about long-range power, responsibility, and strategic influence. That's the deeper shift here. It's not just about Pakistan being able to hit farther. It's about Pakistan having a stronger voice. When a country shows it has this level of capability, others are forced to recognize that it cannot be ignored, sidelined, or underestimated. Its security needs have to be acknowledged. Its decisions carry more weight. And in a region as fragile as South Asia, that kind of recognition creates space for new conversations about deterrence, about peace, and about what the future should really look like. So no, this isn't just another missile test. This is a tectonic move in a region where every inch of military progress shifts the map of power. And when the balance shifts, everyone feels it, because that's the nature of deterrence. It doesn't ask for attention, it demands. When something this big is being developed in silence, there's always a moment when the outside world starts to notice. And that moment, when eyes from above catch movement on the ground, is when everything changes. That's exactly what's happening now. Satellite imagery, intelligence leaks, unexplained infrastructure, sudden activity at previously quiet testing sites. These are the breadcrumbs. And make no mistake, global powers are following them closely. Because when a country like Pakistan starts working on a missile that could potentially reach 5,000 kilometers, that doesn't stay a secret forever. Not in a world where space-based surveillance is watching every corner of the map. The thing is, it wasn't just the range that got attention, it was the pattern. A sudden uptick in construction at known missile development areas, heat signatures from engine testing, unusual logistics being moved in and out of certain zones. For countries like the United States, China, and even European powers, these signs don't lie. You might not see the missile itself, but you see its shadow. And intelligence analysts, who spend their careers connecting these tiny details, started raising flags. Now, once those flags go up, things move fast behind closed doors. Diplomatic cables get exchanged. Military attachés start probing. Defense circles begin reshaping their threat assessments. Because a development like this doesn't exist in isolation. It affects alliances, regional balances, and global calculations. Everyone wants to know, how far along is the missile? Has it been tested? What warhead could it carry? Can it be launched from mobile platforms? These are the questions that keep generals and policymakers up at night, because the answers don't just define capability, they define consequence. What's especially interesting is how quiet the response has been from many governments. That silence, it's not disinterest, it's caution, it's strategic pause. Because acknowledging the missile too early gives it power before it's even confirmed. But waiting too long, that risks being caught off guard. So what do? They monitor, they simulate, they prepare, and slowly their tone begins to shift. Think about the impact that has. When global powers start whispering about your missile development behind closed doors, that means you've arrived on their radar, literally. That means your capabilities are being taken seriously. And in the world of defense and diplomacy, perception is power. The very fact that Western think tanks, international monitoring agencies, and global media outlets are starting to mention this missile means that Pakistan's position is evolving, not just regionally, but globally. This shift also forces a broader conversation about responsibility, because long-range missile capability doesn't just give you reach, it gives you a new kind of visibility. And with visibility comes expectation. If you're capable of launching something that could fly across continents, then you're also expected to show restraint, to think strategically, to manage that power wisely. And that's the weight of entering this level of defense maturity. The eyes that once overlooked you are now watching every move. But here's the thing, they're not watching because of fear. They're watching because they know what it means when a country achieves this level of progress. It means sovereignty fortified by science. It means national resolve backed by technological proof. And it means the balance of global power just tilted, even if only slightly, because now there's another voice in the room that has to be heard. Let's take a moment and really get into why a country like Pakistan would pursue a missile with a 5,000-kilometer range. Because this isn't just about flexing military muscle. It's about something far deeper, more personal, and honestly, more necessary. It's about survival, about maintaining credible minimum deterrence in a world that's changing fast, where security guarantees are fragile and the margin for error is shrinking every day. For Pakistan, this missile isn't just a weapon. It's a statement, a shield, a line in the sand. We talk a lot about deterrence, but what does that actually mean? It means having just enough capability that no one wants to test your resolve. Not too much to provoke fear, not too little to invite aggression. It's a fine balance. And for years, Pakistan's doctrine has been built around that principle. But when your environment changes, when threats evolve, technology advances, and neighboring countries expand their arsenals, you don't get to stand still. Deterrence only works if it grows alongside the threats it's meant to prevent. So let's not pretend this missile is an overreach. It's not about starting conflict. It's about preserving peace through strength. When you have neighbors conducting anti-satellite tests, building multi-layered missile defenses, developing hypersonic weapons, and expanding sea-based nuclear capabilities, you can't afford to be reactive. You need to stay ahead of the curve. You need to create enough uncertainty in the minds of your adversaries that they think twice before making a move. That's what real deterrence does. It changes intentions before actions ever begin. And here's where it becomes a mindset, because you don't just build a missile to scare someone. You build it because you've already made a decision that your sovereignty, your independence, your national dignity is non-negotiable. You're not waiting for someone else to guarantee your protection. You're not putting your faith in shifting global alliances. You're taking control of your future. That's what this missile represents. Not aggression, ownership, not escalation, insurance. The interesting part is how calm and calculated this entire approach has been. There hasn't been a lot of noise, no aggressive rhetoric, no flashy reveals, just quiet progress, steady development, and then a clear, undeniable message. We are ready. That kind of control, that kind of discipline isn't born from fear. It's born from confidence. Confidence in the decision, in the science, in the people behind the project. And most of all, confidence that this capability is necessary, not optional, for national defense. It also reflects a deeper awareness of how the world sees strength. In today's geopolitical landscape, strength isn't just measured by troop numbers or tanks. It's measured by range, precision, survivability, and strategic reach. Countries that possess long-range deterrence are treated differently. Their security needs are respected, their red lines are clearer, and their role in the balance of power becomes impossible to ignore. That's not just a technical shift, it's a political one, a diplomatic one. And Pakistan, by pursuing this capability, is demanding that recognition. This is what credible minimum deterrence looks like in the modern world. It's not about competing in a nuclear arms race. It's about staying relevant, staying respected, and most importantly, staying secure. Because when a nation knows where it stands and what it's willing to protect, then every decision it makes from that point forward becomes stronger, more grounded, and more focused. And that's exactly the posture Pakistan has chosen with. There comes a point in every high-stakes project where silence turns into signal. And when it comes to Pakistan's 5,000-kilometer missile, that moment is getting closer. Fast. Everything that's been building in the background, the research, the testing, the materials, the propulsion work, it all leads to one thing, a test launch. And while nothing official has been declared, the indicators are lining up in a way that tells us the first full-scale test could happen at any time. That's not just exciting, it's pivotal. Because a successful test changes everything from possibility to proof. Let's be clear, no missile, no matter how advanced on paper, truly matters until it leaves the ground. That launch, that ignition, that flight path, that final splashdown or impact zone, that's where reality kicks in. That's when the world pays attention. Because a working, tested missile of this magnitude doesn't just exist in theory anymore. It enters the battlefield of geopolitics, deterrence, and strategy. And you know what? That's when things get serious. This isn't a short-range missile that's tested quietly in the desert. A 5,000-kilometer range demands a wide-open ocean corridor, complex tracking systems, telemetry, and high-level coordination. It's a message to the world before the missile even lands. And when it does, when that flight is successful, it becomes a loud, undeniable declaration. We've arrived, we're capable, we're prepared. Think of what that means on the international stage. Every major military power watches missile launches closely. Radar satellites will be tracking it from the second the ignition starts. Intelligence agencies will be scrambling to analyze the flight data, speed, altitude, accuracy, and of course, its potential payload capacity. That single test turns speculation into certainty. And in the realm of defense, certainty changes policies. It changes how threats are measured. It changes how partnerships are prioritized. But this isn't just about impressing the world. It's also about internal validation. A successful test gives confidence to the scientists and engineers who've spent years, maybe decades, working on this project. It reassures leadership that the strategy was sound, the investment was worth it, and the vision was right. And most of all, it tells the public, quietly but clearly, that their security is being protected by cutting-edge capability. The real impact, though, lies in how the region responds. A launch like this instantly reshapes strategic discussions in South Asia. Military planners on both sides of the Pakistan-India border will be watching closely. Questions will arise. Can it be intercepted? How quickly can it be launched again? Where is it based? Is it mobile? And most importantly, what does this mean for the balance of power? Because every successful test isn't just a military milestone, it's a psychological shift. It forces both rivals and allies to reconsider their assumptions. Now here's where timing matters. You don't test a missile like this unless you're ready to carry the weight that comes after. The diplomatic heat, the media speculation, the global response. You test when you're confident, when you've checked every system, verified every component, and aligned your political and military leadership. That moment doesn't come by accident. It's earned through discipline and readiness. And judging by everything we've seen so far, the test launch is no longer a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And when that moment comes, it will echo far beyond the launch pad.